try to record to my computer.
Perfect.
We would like to welcome you to our Brain Health 101 workshop today. And I would like to note that the information in this presentation is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Our information is intended to empower individuals, their families, and healthcare professionals who want to collaborate in the most cooperative way. Please see a licensed and qualified medical professional for your medical needs. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to welcome and introduce our speakers, Myra, Oney, and Steve Ledvina.
Thanks, Joan. Thank you.
If you have any questions, please type them in the chat box.
Okay, thank you, Joan. So my name is Myra Oney, and I'm a certified holistic health coach. I've been working with Sharp Again Naturally for the last 8 years. And I coach in our small group program, which we're going to be talking a little bit about at the end of the presentation today. And happy to have you all here interested in your brain health and in how you can keep your memory and keep your brain healthy.
Awesome. Thanks, Myra. And I'm Steve Ledvina. I'm a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, one of Sharp Again's board members, and one of the health coaches for Sharp Again's small group program that Myra just mentioned. So since we have some new people, let's start off with just a brief overview of who we are at Sharp Again. Our mission is to educate, empower, and support everyone to take an active role, and keyword being active role, in optimizing their cognitive health using a scientifically based multi-therapeutic approach. And we're going to be covering a number of aspects of that multi-therapeutic approach today. And we envision a world where dementia can be prevented, treated, and reversed, where everyone has the ability to remain cognitively healthy throughout their lives. What are we talking about today? What are we doing today? So first, we're just going to start with the basics on what is normal aging versus what is cognitive decline, and kind of separating those two things and defining that we're trying to prevent cognitive decline, and they're just parts of normal aging. What can you do now to stay sharp? What are the root causes of memory loss? And then finally, and I think most importantly, is leaving here with one or more action steps for yourself. The information and knowledge is important, but if you forgot everything that we talked about today and took away one habit that you're moving forward with, I would say that's better than remembering everything and leaving here without any action steps. So let's start with the first piece, which is that dementia is not normal aging. So things that are considered normal aging, there's a slight decline over our lifetime starting around age 30 in our cognition. And so simple forgetfulness, a delay in or slowing in recalling names, dates, events, trouble finding words in a conversation, slowing in the speed of processing information, learning, or problem solving. All of these things are, to some degree, are part of normal cognition, normal aging. And then once we get to an abnormal, or what is called cognitive decline, it might be things like regularly forgetting appointments or conversations, regularly misplacing items, trouble focusing, often forgetting names of family members or friends, struggle to complete tasks. And kind of the beginning stage of that abnormal aging is what's called subjective cognitive impairment, or SCI. And that's the stage where you know that there are changes in your brain, but your family might not notice and your doctor likely doesn't notice. And importantly, this won't show up on the standard tests for the greater degrees of cognitive impairment, which is mild cognitive impairment, which we'll talk about next. So you might go into the doctor, say, hey, I'm experiencing these symptoms. They give you the standard MOCA test or something similar. And then they say, nope, you're fine. Don't worry about it. but you know there's something going on. And there might be a number of reasons. Maybe you're just before that threshold, or some people have a high enough level of cognitive reserve or intelligence that it takes more decline for them to sort of be categorized with MCI in that test. And so what is MCI? More mild cognitive impairment. So we've moved past subjective or into mild. The test says, you've got a mild level of cognitive impairment. These are changes that your family would notice, you're noticing. You're still able to do daily activities, but you might notice some things you might forget things a little more in those areas, but it's detectable. You would be able to find that on a test. And then finally, one of the ways that you define entering into dementia is where cognitive impairment is severe enough to affect daily activities. And so to give a little bit better of a visualization of this than just these stages, we'll go through, and we've got kind of a graph of what normal aging looks like as far as cognition and decline over the years versus and decline over the years. So normal aging over a lifetime, you see this slight decline. Everyone ages differently, so that looks a little different. But when you're in that subjective cognitive impairment, or what's called preclinical, so preclinical meaning before you would test to be categorized or diagnosed, it's a slightly increased, something is beyond normal aging. And important to note that somebody who's got subjective cognitive impairment does not necessarily always move into mild cognitive impairment. But mild cognitive impairment would be a steeper or faster decline, and then finally transitioning into dementia, which again would be a steeper decline still. But mild cognitive impairment doesn't also mean necessarily that you would transition to dementia. This isn't, once you're in preclinical or subjective, you're destined for dementia. And that's really important to note, because there is this whole field and approach of preventing cognitive decline, and that's really delaying, slowing, stopping, or maybe even reversing your cognitive decline. And so that can start at any age, and the earlier the better is really the takeaway. You can prevent, delay, slow, or stop, and the earlier you start, the better, because you can change the rate of decline or delay the start of decline. To talk a little more about that, Myra. Oops.
Okay, so it used to be that when someone would go to the doctor and the doctor would say, would diagnose them with dementia or Alzheimer's, dementia in particular, there was a feeling that, they would basically say to their patient, you know what, there's really nothing that we can do, maybe put you on one of these couple of drugs and see if they help. But really, you should just go home and get your affairs in order. And that was it. There was really no help and no hope. But now we are starting to live longer, and we are also, research is starting to show that there are things that can be done. So rather than go into fear and denial and wishing it away, wishing that the doctor had never said this to you, or worse yet, even hiding away and trying to hide from yourself and your friends and your families that you are having memory issues, we now know that there are actually things that can be done, because research is beginning to show that changes in lifestyle can make a huge impact on your cognition. We now know many of the causes of memory loss are tied to inflammation and chronic disease, and that there are things you can do in your lifestyle to help prevent that, to help slow it, and therefore to help your brain health. So yes, there is, I don't like to use the word treatment, but there are actions we can take to prevent and slow the progression of memory loss and dementia, and sometimes even reverse it. So when you registered for this webinar, you got a document that was attached that has two different worksheets on it. And in the first one, which we invited you to do before the webinar, and maybe you had time to do it and maybe you didn't, that's fine. But in this worksheet, we invited you to bring to mind for yourself how you rank your lifestyle in 4 different areas: the areas of exercise, sleep, nutrition, and stress. And to really kind of get honest with yourself about where you feel you rank in that lifestyle, your lifestyle habits, and also what's something that you're doing well right now, and what's something that you can do that you can maybe do better. And this was we really just wanted to kind of get you thinking about these areas of your life so that you could come into the webinar sort of with your brain primed for that. If you didn't have an opportunity to do that, that's fine. The second part of the worksheet, or you can also just use a piece of paper of your own. What we'd like you to do is, over the space of the next few slides, we're going to be talking about these 4 different lifestyle areas. We'd like you to just take notes on where you think you might be able to go to work to start making some changes that could improve the health of your brain.
Yeah. And if you didn't print off the worksheet, which we totally understand, this is super simple. Just think of this first section as the brainstorming, or put everything that you might want to do ever down on the top of the first half of your piece of paper. And then we'll loop back at the end and talk about putting some of those ideas into action, refining it down to 1 or 2 things. So what are we talking about? What are these lifestyle factors? Maybe you got a hint of it if you took that assessment or worksheet before the webinar. So sleep. We're just going to start with a really simple overview of this, and then we'll dive a little deeper into 10 different potential changes after this slide. So let's start with sleep. 7 to 9 hours. You've probably heard that 1,000 times. The piece of information that's always missing in that statement is it's 7 to 9 hours of sleep, not 7 to 9 hours in bed. So if you can think of a night of sleep, there's a little bit of time at the beginning where you're falling asleep. Maybe you don't fall asleep right away. Maybe you wake up a few times during the night. Maybe you are kind of in and out of sleep in the morning. All of that awake time doesn't count towards your sleep. So it's maybe 9.5 hours in bed. Personally, takes me about 9.5 hours in bed to get about 7.5, 8 hours of sleep. And I think that's a pretty typical ratio for people. People range from 80% all the way up through 90% of the time that they're in bed, they're actually asleep. So second, nutrition. At the most basic level, the nutrition you're shooting for is kind of a vegetable-heavy Mediterranean diet. And Myra will talk a little bit more about that later. Exercise, a combination of aerobic, so cardiovascular, things like running, walking, biking, dancing, weight training or resistance training, stability. So that's like things like yoga or Tai Chi, really just making sure that we're avoiding a fall and activating that mind-body connection. And all of that kind of adds up to 180 minutes a week, particularly with emphasis on the aerobic and weight training. Mental activity, so keeping your brain active. You exercise your body, you want to exercise your brain. And in the same way as you want to weight train and strengthen your body, you also want to exercise and use your brain. So what are things that would exercise your brain and are shown to prevent cognitive decline? Things like learning a language, reactivating old hobbies, playing an instrument, learning an instrument. I think a key component that we see with people successfully implementing new mental activities is kind of finding a little bit of joy in that thing, not necessarily a slog. Stress management, chronic stress can be very harmful to your body. So finding ways of managing that stress, either removing the stressor or using management techniques like meditation, or could be anything, could be exercise for some people. And then finally, having and making sure to build a rich social life with our loved ones. That's helpful because social life can be a source of purpose. we're social beings. And so a huge percentage of our brain is actually dedicated towards navigating social situations and interactions. And ultimately, having a rich social network can help make all of the other things more effective and easier.
Okay, so we're going to talk for just a minute about nutrition. And I invite you to really listen. A lot of this might not really be new information for you, but really listen and say, hey, you know what? I know that I should be doing this, but maybe I'm not doing it. And that's something I should really look at. I should really look at trying, because I know for myself, I know there's so many changes that I could make, and I know all about them, but I don't do it. And that's just human. So for the next few slides, the information might not be new, but maybe you listen to it in a new way. Okay, so number one, eat whole unprocessed foods. I'm sure you've heard this before, but what this means is basically eating whole foods, something that comes in its, shall we say, natural packaging, as opposed to things that come in cans and boxes. You want to try to eat as much of a plant-based diet as possible. This really has been shown to be an extremely healthy diet. The Mediterranean diet that Steve mentioned is actually it's a very easy diet to follow, and you don't have to like cut out meat and that kind of thing if you're a big meat eater, but it is a very balanced diet, includes a lot of healthy fats. So yeah, but eating a rainbow of vegetables and leafy greens, reducing your dependence on processed foods. Also, one of the easiest, hardest things you can do is begin to cut out added sugar. And it could be something as something like reducing the amount of sugar you add to coffee or tea, cutting out any kind of sodas that you might have. And also, once again, the hard, easy thing to do is to begin eliminating refined carbohydrates from your diet. And what those are basically is anything made with white flour, which includes some of our favorite foods, like pasta, bagels, muffins, biscuits, things like that. If you took one of those suggestions and went to work on it, that would be really a very good start. The next thing is hydration. Hydration is extremely important. It's water, basically our fluids run our bodies, right? And water is essential for delivering nutrients to the brain, as well as very, very important for removing toxins, because your body is constantly detoxifying, but if it doesn't have an avenue to get rid of those toxins, then they just keep being reabsorbed back into your body. It also helps balance mood and reduce stress, and can also help with your sleep, as long as you don't like overload on water 3 hours before you go to bed, so you have to get up all night going to the bathroom. Hydrating actually is very helpful for your sleep. And in our programs, we talk a lot about hydration and the best type of hydration for you. Fasting for 12 hours overnight. So more and more research is showing that this is actually extremely helpful for brain health, as well as for your overall health. Allowing a fast gives your brain cells and your gut microbiome an opportunity to rest and to recover. And it also improves insulin sensitivity. So what does this look like briefly? If you lay down your fork at the end of dinner at 7 o'clock, and you don't eat again until 7 o'clock the next morning, you've done a 12-hour fast. So if you tend to be a before bed snacker, this is where you might find this to be a little bit difficult, but it really has a lot of benefits, especially since, those snack foods tend to not actually be like the healthiest foods. My husband loves the corn chips at 11 o'clock at night. So fasting, but this 12-hour overnight fast has been shown to greatly help with your brain health. The other thing I want to say about this is that if you have any kind of a blood sugar issue, if you're diabetic and you run the risk of having your blood sugar drop at night, then you obviously, this might not be a good thing for you. If you have any kind of that sort of issue, then you definitely want to speak to your healthcare practitioner before you try the 12-hour, the overnight fast.
Okay, so just a quick reminder to write down any of these that you think you even might want to try. So sleep again, diving a little deeper into why do we care about sleep. One of the biggest reasons is there's kind of a detoxification system, sort of the brain's version of the lymphatic system. It's called the glymphatic system. It sort of at night, you have these glial cells that shrink down, cerebral spinal fluid kind of flows in and sort of washes your brain and takes away toxins. One of those toxins is amyloid beta, which is kind of one of the two hallmark molecules of Alzheimer's disease. And even after one poor night of sleep, they can find an elevated level of that in the brain. Just to cherry pick kind of one of many other reasons to care about sleep, to connect to the eating, is that sleep actually, or lack of sleep, helps disrupt your hunger and satiety hormones, which are leptin and ghrelin. And so if you're sleeping poorly, it's going to be harder for you to make dietary changes as well. So moving from why you want to sleep to how you can improve sleep, there's really three categories. There's kind of the pre-bedtime routine, which would be changing things like removing screens or having a wind down routine, not doing anything super stressful before, like watching the news or doing work or exercising. All of those things are going to disrupt your ability to fall asleep. And then things you can do while you're sleeping or while you're actually falling asleep, like have a cooler bedroom or make sure the TV's not on at night, removing any lights from the bedroom so that your brain isn't getting kind of sun signals throughout the night. And then the things you can do throughout the day: lower caffeine intake or keep it early in the day. Caffeine has kind of a 12-hour quarter life. So if you have one cup of coffee, 12 hours later, there's still a quarter cup of coffee's worth of caffeine in your system. So if you're having a lot of cups of coffee throughout the day, you might still have some caffeine in your system when you're falling asleep, and that is kind of disrupting your sleep. Making sure to get outside and use the sun to power that circadian rhythm. All of those sorts of things. That's maybe a third of the potential changes. There's probably 30 changes we talk about in our small groups. So moving from sleep into exercise. We talked a little bit earlier about exercise and what you can do, but why exercise? So the list is almost too long to go over, but suffice to say that exercise is widely considered, especially in the brain health space, about as close to the magic pill that science is searching for as we have, and maybe as we're ever going to get. One of the chief things it does is it improves the cardiovascular risk factors, which are big risk factors for Alzheimer's and also vascular and Lewy body dementia. And then kind of same thing as sleep. How do we improve exercise? Well, the first thing we always say is to start with small changes. Small changes are going to increase the success of having that habit stick, and also, and as importantly, avoid injury. Nothing is going to stop your momentum of improving your exercise regimen than an injury in the first week, which can happen pretty easily if you're ramping up from 0 to 100. I've certainly done it before myself. So what does that look like? It might be adding in an extra walk a week, starting to lift weights, but low levels of weights. If you don't know how to lift weights or do resistance training, find a personal trainer, get a referral to somebody that you trust. Or a lot of people have physical therapy exercises that they haven't been doing in a while, and maybe it's a good time to start those back up, something that somebody's already recommended to you who's knows your body really well. You might find an exercise partner. And again, just to emphasize, what we're looking for is really a combination of cardiovascular exercise, weight training, and stability exercise, with the emphasis on cardio and weight training. And all three of those things could happen at the same time, or two at once. Something like rowing might combine weight training and cardio, or dancing would be stability and cardio. And definitely try and find something fun for you as well. Number 6, it's just back to that challenge your brain. We kind of touched on this at the beginning because it's one of the big categories, but the brain develops neural connections when we learn new information and when we're engaged. So learning something new, like a language or instrument, or doing problem solving, can help stimulate the brain.
Okay, so next up we have number 7 is socialize with loved ones. So as this box says, humans are social. We're social beings. We're tribal beings, and really our overall health depends on our social connections. So whether this is gathering with friends and family, whether it is being active in a group of people who you share common interests with, a faith-based group, pretty much anything is as we found during the pandemic. Studies have linked social isolation to developing dementia. So even if you never really thought of yourself as being a social person, you might want to start to actually find ways that you can reach out and be involved in the community, with your family, with your friends. And that might be breaking an age-long habit, or a way you always thought about yourself as not being a social person, not being a person who joined groups. This might actually be something that you want to really reconsider. Lots and lots and lots of new information about how our lack of social connections affects dementia. Next we have, managing stress. Yeah, so this is really a huge one. And there's a difference. There are 2 different kinds of stress. There's good stress and bad stress. And good stress is like the stress of running away from the tiger, right? It's the stress that keeps you safe. It's the stress that gets you to an appointment on time, that gets a big project finished. So it's momentary, okay? It's there, it serves its function, and it's gone. Bad stress, which is what we're talking about here, is chronic stress that doesn't go away. And chronic stress contributes to health problems, including high blood pressure, weight gain, headaches, anxiety, digestive issues. It actually increases the amount of inflammation in your body, which leads to all of these chronic diseases. So learning to manage stress is very, very important. And Steve touched on a few things earlier that can help manage stress. Obviously, meditation, yoga, exercise is really, really big actually in helping to manage stress. So listening to music, walking in nature, anything that can activate the rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system, is going to help you to manage stress. And next we have, don't delay, start now, number 9, very important. So it's very important that you don't put off making lifestyle changes that will help improve your overall physical, mental, and emotional health, and therefore your brain health. The earlier you start to make changes, the more time it is you'll have to make a difference. Because honestly, if you have ever tried to make a change or break a habit or make a new habit, it takes time, because you move ahead and you go back, you move ahead and you go back. But every time you move ahead, when you go back, you've gained a little bit more. So the time to start is not when all of a sudden you might find yourself moving from that subjective cognitive impairment into the mild cognitive impairment range, because honestly, the longer you wait, the harder it gets to make changes. So the time to start is now. And yeah, you might even want to talk to your kids and your grandkids about brain health. It's never too late for them to start healthy lifestyle. If you're like my kids and they don't want to hear me yakking at them about changing their lifestyle, then you can at least share with them what it is you're doing and why you're doing it, because that's something that they might actually listen to. And number 10 is create sustainable change, kind of like what we were just talking about. Long-term change creates a healthier brain, and it takes time. It takes time, it takes a system, and it takes support of a community to help you make new habits. That whole socializing, interaction, being part of a group, as well as your own personal commitment to making a change is all very important to create sustainable changes. So this is the second part of the worksheet that you got. And this is really a little piece of gold here, because the best way to begin making changes is to start out by making a goal. Now, this is probably not really big news to you, but maybe you haven't really thought about how to go about doing this in a really methodical, sustainable way, or maybe you never thought about how you can apply this to your health. So what I'd like you to do right now is, either on the worksheet or on a piece of paper, write down one goal, one health-related goal that you would like to change, and try and make this like a goal to change a habit that might not be so healthy, or maybe instead of changing, begin a new habit that can improve your brain health. Now, this might be something new, or it might be something that you've already been working on, but you want to recommit to it, and maybe recommit to it in a new way. So an important thing about this goal is it needs to be specific, and it needs to be realistic. Okay. So you might make a goal that says, your big goal might be, I want to lose 60 pounds in the next year. Okay, great. But that's big. All right. It's a big number. It can feel like a big number and feel like a long time. So why don't you start out by saying, I want to lose 2 pounds a week for the next month. Okay, it's time bound, it's specific, and it's realistic. And weight loss might not be your goal. This is just an example. So why don't you start out by just taking a couple of minutes and write down a specific goal that you would like to reach, making it time bound, specific, and realistic. Okay, so moving on. And if you haven't gotten anything yet, that's fine. You can always go back and do this later. The idea, we just like to have you get the idea of how to do this in your head. So the next thing you would do is take that goal and turn it into 3 action steps. So let's say that you made this hypothetical goal that you want to lose 2 pounds a week, which over the course of a year, you will lose 60 pounds, by the way, if you keep doing it. But so what are 3 things that you might do to lose 2 pounds in the first week? Going back and listening to everything that we've been talking about, might you cut down on, maybe you cut down, you only have pasta 1 day this week. Maybe you reduce the amount of sugar that you have in your morning beverage. Maybe you walk a couple of extra days a week. Maybe you really become committed to perhaps a 12-hour fast, or getting to bed at a better time so you get more sleep and your body has a better chance to detox. What are 3 doable things that you could do to make your goal a reality?
All right, we'll give everybody another minute.
Yep.
To finish writing your action steps. I think Myra's example was good, because a lot of different lifestyle factors could factor into something like losing weight. If you want to make a more habit-oriented goal, you could do something, a lot of people do something as simple as, I'd like to drink this many ounces of water a day. I'd like to drink 70 ounces of water a day, and I'm going to fill up a jug with that many ounces of water at the start of the day, so I can see it sitting there on the counter. Okay, seeing a lot of people looking up, so I think we'll jump ahead and talk about some additional preventable causes. So today's workshop and webinar focused on the lifestyle causes, and that's really what we focus on, just for everybody's knowledge in the small group program, because those are changes we can make together. But there's this whole other world of causes of cognitive decline that we talk about in webinars and our materials. So feel free to, we've got a few additional webinars on these types of causes coming later this year. We've got a whole YouTube channel, and these things are all over our website. There's some really good materials there. So if you're interested in these, there's lots of places to find them. They're just all big topics on their own. And in fact, each of the things we talked about today is a pretty big topic on its own too. So what are they? So toxins. Toxins can be in your food, water, or air. That can be either at home or at work. Kind of what are we talking about? This can be things like fertilizers, pesticides, personal care products, plastics. At some point, the body can no longer absorb or manage the load of toxins, or most often a particular toxin, and symptoms might start to develop. One of those symptoms can be memory loss or cognitive decline. Another one is hormonal imbalances, big hormones that have an effect on cognitive decline or keeping your brain healthy. Are the thyroid and sex hormones, so things like estrogen. And hormones are really fundamental to all systems of the body. If you have high or low levels of certain hormones, it can have a negative effect on the brain. Inflammation is a really big topic, and it's actually one of the kind of mechanisms of harm of a lot of the other causes. So inflammation occurs when there's something, some injury to the body, or a source like a virus or bacteria that can cause the inflammation. Usually the body resolves inflammation quickly, and so it's no problem. But sometimes if the body can't resolve it, or if the source of inflammation is perpetually there, perhaps in the case of a toxin, for example, then it becomes chronic inflammation, and that can have a significant negative impact on the brain. Heavy metal toxicity. I think everybody probably knows that things like mercury and lead aren't good for you. And they're not good for your body. They're definitely not good for your brain. And so if you have sources of those heavy metals, and your body's not clearing them at a sufficient rate, and the levels build up, those can have a negative effect on your brain, and they're pretty easy to test for. Trauma. So both physical and emotional trauma, things like traumatic brain injuries, concussions, or emotional traumas like adverse childhood events or exposure to violence, both have been shown to have long-lasting negative effects against the brain, but there's also treatments for them. So that's something to look out for and consider. Medication effects. Really important to say at the top that you should not change any medications or manage medications without the help of a physician. But medications can have negative effects on cognition, whether that's a side effect of a particular drug or a drug interaction. And so our only recommendation here is to just be an advocate for yourself. Ask questions. If you're experiencing memory issues, make that one of the conversations you have with your doctor. Hey, I'm experiencing these memory symptoms. Is it possible any of these medications are a factor? I think, especially if you've dealt with somebody in your family with dementia, we all have a sense that the medical and healthcare field can be difficult to navigate, and there's often a lot of different doctors. So just having that conversation with your primary care doctor or whatever doctor you're working with can bring it to their attention, and just make sure that their eye is on that particular issue. And then finally, stress, which we talked about a little bit today. So just again, if you're interested in these topics, we probably have a webinar on pretty much all of these on YouTube. We definitely have lots of materials on our website, and more webinars coming soon.
So circling back to the worksheet that you all did, you might have noticed when you were setting a goal and when you were coming up with 3 possible steps that you could use to achieve this goal, you might have thought that, well, this, maybe I could do this, but maybe it would be a lot easier for me to do it if I had help. And so one of the things that Sharp-Again does is that we provide a small group coaching program that we call the Stay Sharp Coaching Program. And it's really a unique program. There is no other organization that we know who offers this particular type of service. And what it is a small group of people who are interested in changing their lifestyle in order to get a better brain, a healthier brain. Being led by 2 professional health coaches. So we have the program is 6 group coaching sessions that take place over the period of 6 weeks, plus 2 one-to-one coaching sessions, which is extremely high value. It's extremely high value and extremely valuable. One-to-one session before the group coaching begins, and then a second one-to-one session again at the end to kind of wrap up and make sure that the participant is taking away with them something they can really go to work on, as well as to continue making changes in their lives. Program also includes education and resources, but it really is about coaching. Knowledge is, in an information age, knowledge isn't that hard to come by, but support in reaching your goals is something that is that's very unique to this program, as well as, of course, the support of your peer group. And we also now have a cognitive assessment from Cambridge Brain Science that we invite you to take if you're interested, and we talk more about that during the one-on-one coaching sessions. So we have some testimonials. This one, I consider myself to be a conscientiously healthy person. Many people who come to this program, that's how they feel about themselves. But this program really helped me focus more on things that could impact my memory. And then this person goes on to, talk about some of the change they could make. My favorite part of the program was that it focused on 4 topics, the 4 topics that we focused on today. You get a taste of everything, you get time for it to sink in, and then you get to use that knowledge to make effective changes. These are things that people in this group have said. So we have a new program beginning on July 18th. That's the week that the one-on-one sessions begin. And as of today, actually, you only have 1 spot left in this program. I'm going to talk about it, and maybe you would be that person who would say yes. Raise your hand and say, yes, I'm ready to do this. So the deadline to enroll is next Tuesday, July 12th. And I sort of talked about, yes, offers a unique opportunity for those looking to preserve their cognition. All right, so this is best for people who either are beginning to experience subjective cognitive impairment or just simply don't want to get there to begin with, who are ready to cross that line, okay? Cross the line between thinking about doing something about it and then actually doing something about it. It's a unique program, and you work with a professional health coach and a small group, maximum 8 people in the group. And we help you through education and conversation to begin to modify lifestyle factors, number 1, identify and then modify those lifestyle factors that can be impacting people's brain health. And frankly, one of the biggest things that we hear from people who participate in the group, one of their favorite things about it is meeting and working with other people in the group and learning from other people in the group and getting that kind of peer support. So that it's really a great program. I'm one of the coaches in this program beginning July 18th. And I'm very, very excited to we're always implementing new things, and we now actually have a physical workbook that you get. So to help put a framework around the program for you. So, Joan, I think, I mentioned that we have one spot left in this July 18th group. After that, we might go to a wait list, or we have a program coming up in October. And Joan, I think you were going to say something about the October program.
Yes, our October program, we have not yet decided on the day of the week and time of day. So we wanted to
oh, you know what, Joan? I forgot to mention, it's actually not on here, I don't think, that this program meets Tuesdays at noon Eastern time. And so so go ahead, Joan. Sorry.
So my poll is not working. So I'm going to include this poll in the survey that I send out later today. We were curious about the best day of the week, time of day, and I will include that. I'm not sure what happened to my poll.
Joan, I just launched it, so I don't know.
Oh, you did?
If people can see it.
Okay.
Can people see it?
I can't see it.
I can't see it.
I can see it.
You're both hosts, so there you go. Perfect. Thank you for whoever answered that. One person completed it. 2 persons completed. People.
So I guess if you wouldn't mind taking just like a minute or so to answer this poll. We are looking for the best days and times of the week for people who are interested in doing this program to do it.
Yeah, and I see one hand is raised. We've got like 2 slides left, and then we're going to be in only Q&A. So if we could take questions at the end, that'd be awesome. All right. I think looks like 7 people completed it, but it doesn't look like anyone else is completing it, so we'll call it.
And I'll include that too, if anyone wants to add it to the survey.
All right. Okay. All right. So beyond the small group, I've mentioned a few times, we have a couple upcoming webinars. Next one coming up in September is how to manage stress, depression, and anxiety to help prevent memory loss. That's with Dr. Richard Carlton on September 13th at noon Eastern. Then in October, we have a really interesting one. We've not done something like this before, so I'm personally excited about it. It's the ApoE4 gene, what it tells us and what we can learn from it. For anybody who doesn't know, that's kind of one of the genes that is shown to increase risk for Alzheimer's disease. And then in November, we have a webinar on toxins. Better detox equals a better brain with Dr. Penelope McDonald. So all those registrations are on our website, and I'm sure they'll be linked somewhere in an email with follow-up. So what else can you do? I've mentioned a bunch of times, visit sharpagain.org. There's lots of information there. Sign up for our email list. Join or refer someone to our programs. If the program isn't a great fit for you, keep it in the back of your mind as you're talking to friends and family in the future, and maybe send somebody our way if you think the program would be a good fit. And then kind of very importantly is, if you can, support Sharp Again Naturally with a donation that funds these types of webinars. We do one webinar about a month, and we offer those coaching programs at greatly reduced rates. And so the donations help us. The more donations we get, the more programs we can offer at this point. So now time for Q&A, and we'll start with, I think, Amiko, if you still have, if I'm saying your name right, if you still have a question, I would love to answer it since you raised your hand. So I think you're muted.
Yeah, if you'd like to ask a question, please unmute yourself.
Okay, you saying that they meet once a week and that's it?
Yes. So, Myra, do you want to answer since it's your group?
Yeah, so we meet once a week for 6 weeks, for 75 minutes. And so that's the group program. And then we also, in addition to that, the week before the program begins, you have a one-on-one session with either myself or Kim Ramos, who is my co-coach. And then there's also another one-on-one session at the end of the program.
And how much does it cost?
It's, I believe it's $79.
Okay.
So it's really, for all that you get, it's an incredible value.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Lois, you had a question? Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I am very interested in the program, although I think based on what I've heard here, I think I'm pretty good. My exercise needs to be improved. But in any case, Tuesday at 12 is a problem because I have a volunteer job from 9 to 12. So I guess if you do it again in October, I'm hoping that, I'll be able to join.
Awesome.
Well, Lois, if you get a chance to fill out the poll, and that where you can fill out your preference of day and time, then that would help us a lot.
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay, terrific.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Terrific. Good. Well, we hope to see you in October then.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Joan.
We do have a question. Has pickleball been studied in addressing dementia?
Ooh. I've not seen that. I would not be surprised if there's some PhD out there doing it as we speak. But I would say from the research that already exists, that's, I'll give you the rule of thumb. Does it raise your heart rate? Are you hustling enough at pickleball that it raises your heart rate enough over the time? I'm sure that's the case. I also think pickleball probably has some stability, flexibility benefits too, keeping you more stable, doing fall prevention work. You probably can't go wrong with playing lots of pickleball. And it's social. There's some joy involved, stress reduction, probably hitting like 5 or 6 different great points there.
Why pickleball is different from, say, tennis is that there's a lot of thinking involved. They created it that way. The scoring is difficult, and it's been set up to help with the brain. And I just wonder if there's evidence saying that's true.
I wonder as well. I will do a search of the research, and
Thank you.
maybe that'll be, maybe you just created a new tagline for future webinars.
Right.
Thank you, Susan.
Any other
Anyone
questions?
No? Okay. So only one final comment just from Lois's comment is there's always new details to figure out. I think some of the people who's been in groups before or who've worked with somebody can attest to. I think the more you learn, the more you realize that you can do. And I'm glad that seemed like a digestible amount because we want to keep it nice and constrained. But we really went kind of a mile wide and inch deep here. And on sessions in each of the programs, but also webinars and books, I think the common feeling is often one of overwhelm with the amount of changes you can make. I certainly feel that way sometimes. So.
Oh, I have another question. Let me see here.
Yeah,
Lois, yeah.
Oh,
we can hear you.
yeah. I read at night on a Kindle, but it is set for lower blue light. I don't always read on a Kindle. Sometimes I read on a book, but in a book, but in addition, because I have a lot of pain when I get into bed, I use an app, but I turn the screen off, an app on my cell phone. I turn the screen off and I just have this very soothing person telling me whatever.
Mhm.
Is the Kindle, you think, a problem?
If it's turning off the blue light, reading a book is pretty calming. I mean, reading a book is sort of like one of the recommended things, especially if it's, I always like to say, like a boring enough book. You want a boring enough book, like something that you like, but that you're not like staying up an extra 2 hours because it's so exciting. Something that you're gonna fall asleep with. So I think Kindle probably makes sense if it's got that low light feature. I know some people
does.
use like a red light, reading light, as a nighttime thing, since it's that you can usually read with the red light. And then I kind of forgot your extra question.
And actually, I have heard that in some ways a Kindle can actually be better, especially if you have the blue screen, because it's simple to it's easy to simply close it and go to sleep. Whereas if you're actually reading a book, you have to go through the action of bookmarking the book, turning off the light, and just doing that can possibly start to disrupt your move into sleep. So I kind of think, as with many of these things, it's sort of what works for you personally.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like and I love that you're using an app for pain management, sort of a meditation app for pain, or whatever, for pain management.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I have to just take away from what Steve said. If I have a book that I'm really, really love, I don't feel the pain, because your brain can only do one thing at a time. The moment I put that book down or the Kindle down, boom, there it is.
Interesting.
Well, and then maybe that book's the right book to fall asleep for you. I think that one of the big takeaways from all of these is there's no hard and fast rules. There always has to be a self-monitoring component to changes. If somebody tells you to exercise 180 minutes a week and you feel like you're going to get hurt, terrible recommendation for you. Don't do that. If somebody recommends a diet and you've tried out and it's terrible for you, don't do that. So if we have any final questions, I think we're maybe out of time. I don't know, Joan, is there anything in the chat?
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. As soon as the recording is available, I'll send the link out to it on our YouTube channel, and I'll include additional information about our upcoming programs and some of the topics that were covered today.
Yep, and I do hope that you got some useful information, and that you, after attending this webinar, are able to take that information and put it into a form that will help you move ahead in making a lifestyle change that's important to you. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you very much.